not making this video for you. Or am I? Welcome back to the Idea Supply Chain, where we take a look at where ideas come from and what makes those ideas valuable. Today, I wanted to talk about a quote that came up during a group session in my Writers Collective yesterday. And it's a quote from Rick Rubin. And something he said is, "The audience comes last." Now, if you think about the world of content creation and how everybody talks about what needs to happen in order to grow an audience, in order to, put yourself out in the world that way. A lot of times you hear, we've got to put the audience first. You've got to think about exactly what they want to see and then create that. But then you look at Rick Rubin and he's saying the audience comes last. They don't know what they want. I'm going to create what I want and give it to them, and that's what they're going to enjoy. And I actually explored a similar idea when I wrote an introduction to abundant systems. And in that newsletter I wrote, I compared two different programmers. So let's say that you've got two programmers who are exactly the same at a given point in time. And both of these programmers decide that they want to start growing an online audience. Now, they decide to take two different approaches. The first takes an approach of, I'm going to figure out how to be a better content creator. I'm going to figure out how to put a message out there that an audience will resonate with, and I'm going to grow my audience and really try to maximize the number of people I can help. Now, the second programmer says, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do something a bit different. I'm going to focus on learning as much as I can about programming, and I'm just going to kind of share what I learn along the way. Who is going to end up winning in the battle of content creation? In the short term, it's going to be the first developer. They're going to get better at crafting their messages. They're going to get better at building an audience. They're going to start this momentum early. But in the long run, it's actually the second developer. Because what's going to happen is, over time, if somebody is trying to learn about software engineering and how to, build good products, things like that, they're going to find out that the second programmer has a greater depth of knowledge. They're going to have much better understanding. And then anyone who followed the first programmer is actually going to be at a disadvantage, because they may have either not learned something as deeply as they could have had they followed the second programmer. Or even worse, they're going to have learned something that's completely wrong and have to unlearn that in order to learn the correct way to do something. And I think this is a great example that proves Rick Rubin is correct. The audience comes last. What you want to do is you want to focus on being as good as you can possibly be at the topic that you're focusing on, and let the long-term results speak for themselves. If you look at my channel, I do a lot of things that are directly not in line with what everybody says you should do. And I do that as a reminder to myself to focus on talking about the things that I'm doing, why I'm doing them, how I'm doing them, and just really being as transparent as possible, talking about what I'm thinking about. And over time, I'm letting myself become more comfortable on camera. It's easier for me to just speak off the top of my head because it's stuff that I'm doing. It's stuff that I'm talking about. My understanding becomes so deep, the camera becomes completely irrelevant. And that's the experience that I'm trying to deliver to you. So if you're watching my channel, you're not going to get a bunch of flashiness that's designed to capture your attention and make it to where, you're super likely to share it as something like easily shareable. Instead, I'm focusing on what information can I provide that is the most long-term beneficial to you if you listen to what I'm saying over time, if you do what I do. I'm not saying I do everything right. In fact, I do a lot of things wrong, and I try to talk about that quite a bit. because I would rather people not make the same mistakes that I've made in the past. And when I talk about abundant systems rewards you for playing the long game, not the short game. But we live in kind of this attention-driven economy where it's all about the numbers right now. How quickly can you grow? How many views can you get on this video or that video? And that is not a guarantee of long-term success. And in fact, a lot of times it can be an anti-signal, because it will be a lot easier to get people to understand something that is deeper, more nuanced, more correct, if you will, than it is to say whatever kind of inflammatory thing, seems like it would work in this moment. And I have experience in that. And actually, I just wrote about it in my latest newsletter, because I saw firsthand how it could be very successful. You can attract eyeballs, but that's not the good way to drive long-term value. And so we really need to think about systems from an abundant standpoint of, okay, let's assume that this system is going to exist long term. Let's assume that the participants in the system are going to be around long term. So how can we maximize the long term value of any interactions that we have? And I think by focusing on not the audience, but the content and the knowledge and the information, that's where we can ultimately be very successful. And so that's why I do things a different way. That's why I don't try to have the flashy thumbnails. And if you look at the earlier videos in my channel, there was a point when I did that. I explored it. I wanted to understand what was happening and why. And ultimately, it kind of led to me burning out a bit with it. I was constantly trying to think of different video ideas and like working on these different formats and playing around with editing. And that's not what I want to focus on. I love that some people can do that and they can really develop editing skills, and they can learn how to grow their audience to a massive amount and get a bunch of ad revenue that way from YouTube. But I don't believe in ad revenue as a good revenue source. And so I'm not that worried about monetizing the channel. I would much rather give you something worthwhile and then build that relationship into something to where you come to me for some consulting work or coaching work, something more long-term value for both of us. And so in that sense, I am making this video for you, but I'm only making it for you if you believe in the long-term value of what I'm saying. And I'm trying to show you that I am, in fact, walking the walk, and I'm living by the principles that I share here, because it's what I truly believe in. It's what I've studied and come to the realization of, what things we're doing wrong. And in that, I have developed, a bit of my own taste. And that's something that, Rick Rubin talks about as well. Having that taste, knowing what's good, and not listening to the vast majority who simply don't. And when you think that way, when you think long term, when you focus on how you can be the best source of information and knowledge and experience, you get that by actually living what you're talking about and showing people that you're just sharing what you're doing. I talk a lot about just kind of building in public, kind of document, don't create is another one. I believe that was from Gary Vee. And so, there are these ideas floating out there, but they tend to be drowned out by the noise in the system, where it's a bunch of people focused on growing on YouTube, telling you how to be better at growing on YouTube. Okay, but what's the purpose of growing on YouTube? Maybe that's not the thing you should be focused on. Maybe the thing you should be focused on is actually developing a skill not an ability to manipulate an algorithm, which is a skill, but it's a very specific skill that then the algorithm changes and your skill loses value. When I try to develop a skill, I look at skills that I can develop that long term compound in value. And for me, that's understanding how we can build abundant systems. It's working on my writing to be better connected to not only the people that I'm writing for, but really myself, and getting the deeper thoughts out of my head that I tend to try to avoid. I do a lot of work on myself and then use that to provide a better message outwardly. And I think that's a much better approach to take if you're looking at the long term. So, um, yeah, in a nutshell, it's not for the audience, except it is. It's for the audience because I believe in creating long term value for you. And it's up to you whether or not to take that. But that's the difference between me and the YouTube algorithm. I believe you can make your own choice, and I believe that you're going to make the one that's the best one for your future. And maybe that's watching my videos, and maybe it's not. But I'm okay with it either way because I'm happy with what I'm creating. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.